I wanted to make a video about the new Kindle Colorsoft, which is the device on the right here. The device on the left is the new Kindle Paperwhite Signature Edition. And I wanted to have a video that would actually show me what it's like to read comics on the Kindle Soft, on the Colorsoft, because that seems to be missing from all the various Kindle Colorsoft reviews out there. Some do mention it in passing, but not really the comics that I might typically read. And so I wanted to compare the two. So first, let's just switch on the Kindles. And if we look, I wanted to look first at the text, just as a quick comparison here. So if I look here at this book, okay, so here we have like a comparison of the text, and I guess on the video this is going to look whiter and this is not going to look as bright. Let's look at the settings. So settings here. So settings here, I've turned on auto brightness all the way, brightness all the way. And then the warmth is set at 8 on the Colorsoft to make it pop a little more. If I decrease the color, then you can see that the color changes. And then this appears whiter now. I actually feel that the text is clearer on the Paperwhite than the Colorsoft. And if you look here, I don't know if you can tell on the video or not, but this is grainy. There's a screen door effect that goes over the Colorsoft display, and it makes it kind of grainy. And whereas this text here on the Paperwhite is much sharper. Maybe this is not coming through in the video, but that's how I feel. So now let's go back to the real intent of this, which is to look at comics. And so I'm going to take away the Paperwhite, and I'm going to bring in my iPad. And this is an iPad Pro from 2020. And I guess you're going to say that this is going to be an unfair comparison because the iPad obviously has so many more colors than the Kindle Colorsoft. And it has, yeah, I mean, it's a bigger size. This is actually more like a comic book size. The size on the Colorsoft is very small by comparison. So if I open up a comic here, I'm going to open up this one, Ghost Box by Mike Carey. And then if we come to this page, you know, obviously on the iPad, it's very, you know, bright and like colorful, and you see the full display of the colors. On the Colorsoft, colors are muted, right? And that's to be expected because of the e-ink technology that they're using and the screen door effect. And you can see here, but I mean, the size of it in comparison, and this is pretty much a comparison to like a regular comic book size. To me, this is like looking at a digest. If you remember the old like digest size comics that you could buy at a supermarket, like Archie Double Digest, or in the 80s, you know, there used to be the DC Blue Ribbon Digest, or Gold Key had like Ripley's Believe It or Not Digest, right? And so it's kind of that size when you're holding this in your hand. But like everything is you know, like it's a bit muted, but it's still readable. Now, the text can be hard to read. So if you want to read the text clearly, you just double tap and then like you can go into the panel view. You know, which you can also do over here as well on the iPad. And, you know, you can see more details that way, right? So it's less bright, but it's still readable. And then here, obviously, you're getting the full color range effect. And one reason why I chose to look at this one is because the colorist is Jose Villarrubia. Can't say his name correctly, but he's really a masterful colorist, who can use the full palette range. He can do watercolor effects. I mean, he is a full artist in his own right when he comes to approaching these projects. So he might not be happy to see this, but you know what? If you're reading at night, it's pretty nice. So anyway, let's zoom back out and let's advance the page a little bit. Yeah, and then we can see here, this one is a full outdoor scene with these captions here. And then here on this device, the captions are a little bit hard to make out. But again, if we double tap on it, oh, I went back. If I double tap here to go into the panel view, then it's readable. So frequently for a lot of these comics, you will have to go into the panel view to read stuff. And if that bothers you, then it's probably not the device for you. And so if we go forward once more, here you can see another comparison. Here's an outdoor scene, and here's how it looks over here. And then if we go one more, now this is a real detailed scene that the artist put in a lot of work to show all of the objects in this dilapidated house that the two women have inherited here. And so over on the Colorsoft, it's more washed out, like we said. It's more diluted, muted, better word. But if you double tap, then you see more details. But again, the color is less. It's less in intensity. And it's not really what Jose would have wanted you to see. Okay, so there's one comic, and this is more of a Vertigo type of comic that you would look at here. And so then there's another one that we can look at for a good comparison, which is this first volume of X-Men by Jonathan Hickman. And I'm going to go back to the beginning here. Okay. So we're going to see here in a second. Okay, now this is really a sort of, prime example of the muted color on the Colorsoft. It really cannot display reds that well. This red, this does not look like red. It looks like a reddish brown, or maybe some sort of reddish brown clay that you would see on some houses and stuff. It's not red at all. And of course this can be affected by your settings here. So if you look at my settings, I've just got brightness turned all the way up. I've got the color mode is set to vivid. Now, some people recommend that you turn the warmth up a little bit, which will improve the display. It doesn't really make it any more red. It does make sort of the background a little more white. And then that's all that you can get as far as the intensity of the color. And so if we scroll through this a little bit, you can see here, this one is a set of panels that's mostly black with a little bit of reddish in there, right? And this is for Scott Summers' Cyclops. He's regaining his vision slowly. And over here on the Colorsoft, it barely shows up. That effect barely shows up. The subtlety is kind of gone. And so if we do the page more, and now you can see here, Professor X is pretty much in a red foreground and a reddish background. And then here, again, it's kind of that It's kind of that, you know, reddish brown color right here, right? And actually, when you look at it, the whole, because it's from Cyclops' point of view, the whole page has like red elements in it. The glasses are red, his skin is a little bit red, that's red. You know, his skin is red, but over here, you can make it out. You can make it out, but it's not quite the same, right? So, you know, if you're someone who really wants to read the comic with the full digital effect, you need an iPad, you know, and it's probably unfair for me to compare the iPad to the Colorsoft, but you know, it's something that I wanted to know before I actually bought it. I'm considering to return it. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it. Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same, but it does have its usefulness, right? Because this is a little bit more compact and travel friendly. I can easily put this in my jacket pocket and walk out the door. It's easier to read this at night because there's not so much glare. So it has, you know, like a lot of usefulness to it. But if I had a comic that I was really into and I read it here, I would probably read it a second time on the iPad just to see all of the colors and the full effects and everything. All right, so let me show you another one, another case that I think is maybe a little bit better. Okay, so I wanted to look at this Batman and the Outsiders comic because this was done when colors were more flat. When they had the, you know, traditional 4-color like printing process. And so one complaint has always been that digital reproductions of older comics, that the colors are just way too bright in intensity, right? So like if you look at, say, the Marvel Masterworks or like any kind of like reprint from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, most of them try to take the original color scheme and then do that digitally. I mean, do that with like computer-generated color. I'm not explaining it very well. And sometimes it's too bright. Actually, this one is not too bad. Here you can see what it looks like. There, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, it looks pretty good, I think. And then if we like scroll a couple of pages, you know, you'll see the splash page. That background is very, very high intensity red. I don't remember it being that red when I bought the original comic. And then here it's much more subdued, right? And actually this is why I did want to try out the Colorsoft, because at first I was critical of it without having ever seen it. And then someone told me, no, like for older comics, it's actually very good. It feels more like a real comic. So I'll leave that for you to decide. I mean, it's somewhat true and it's somewhat not true. You can see that there's a lot of graininess in the image. That's from the screen door effect that goes over the screen to make the color. Now, if we go forward, you'll see like the next page, the first page of the story. And you can see here, you know, this was drawn by Jim Aparo, you know, who had worked for DC for, you know, over 2 decades. And he was kind of like a very classical artist. I think that you can see here in some respects that he's very much influenced by newspaper artists, newspaper cartoonists, probably like Milton Caniff and other people. You can see some of that in his style. And he uses a very traditional grid. So if you go here and you double tap, that grid structure really works nicely in like going through on the panel view over here. And so like if you wanted to flip through this panel by panel. Now the only thing is, here's the weird thing about the panel by panel thing on the Colorsoft. So if you look at how I went here, this is the last panel on that page, and then this is the first panel on the next page. And then over here, last panel on the other page. Instead of seeing this panel, I see the full page, right? Which is strange because if you're going panel by panel and there's something really shocking happens here, you're already going to see it. So when you come through here, then you start seeing the next panel, and you see the next panel, right? So it's kind of broken, I think. I don't understand why they would have two different implementations. But as you go through, you know, it looks pretty good, I think. And then let me just turn this off. Turn this off. Turn this off. And then we can go, and then here's like a page where Superman actually shows up. And then Superman obviously has the red and the blue and the yellow. And then if we double click here, yeah, then we can see what the differences are. Here it's very bright. Here it's more subdued. It's more like a comic that has maybe aged a bit in your long box drawer, and so the color is faded, and that's what that looks like. Right, and then, yeah, I mean, you can see, like going close here, you don't really have to, on old comics, sometimes you don't really have to double tap because you can read the captions quite well in a traditional, like, structured comic like this. Yeah, and that's what that looks like. So, I mean, you know, I think it has its pros and cons. Like I said, I think the Colorsoft works better for older comics than newer comics, because newer comics use the... older comics have the 4-color process, which looks better on here. And then newer comics have the computer-generated, not computer-generated, but computer color tools that allow them to use like a full range of effects. And those don't look very good on here at all. Yeah, so like if you have a library of older comics, maybe this is the device for you. I mean, for me personally, I'm always going to use an iPad, no matter what. And if I was going to keep this, I would just use it for doing stuff on the go, like putting it in my bag, going to a doctor's appointment. I would look at stuff, or reading stuff at night because it's less harmful to the eyes than the iPad. Yeah, I mean, that's really the use case for it for me. There you go. Hopefully this has helped people, you know, think about which one that they want to get. And that's about it for now.